Ladies and gentlemen, we turn now to our next presentation by our keynote speaker, the High Commissioner of India, His Excellency Jawed Ashraf, bearing a lecture on opportunities in the age of disruption. Mr. Jawed Ashraf joined as High Commissioner of India to the Republic of Singapore in 2016. A career diplomat, High Commissioner Ashraf joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1991. He served in Frankfurt and Berlin and has worked in the Americas Division of the Ministry of External Affairs in New Delhi. He completed a 3-year tenure as consular at the embassy in Kathmandu and served as Consular Minister for Political Affairs in Washington, D.C. He then headed the Americas Division in the Ministry of External Affairs in New Delhi. High Commissioner Ashraf served also as Joint Secretary in the Prime Minister's office under former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh and then Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi. His portfolio included external affairs, defense, national security, council, atomic energy, and space. Applause for the ambassador of the great nation that is India, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning, everyone. Nomita, with Sun Media, congratulations on a wonderful occasion. Mr. Douglas Fu, thank you for joining us here today. You, of course, wear many hats, and I realize today you're also an ambassador, so adding to the list of ambassadors here today, but you've been a great friend of all the countries present and done a great service in terms of building relationships. Ambassador Ong Keng Yong, not just the Vice Chair of RSIS, one of the most eminent institutions in the world, but also the impossible task of chairing the India-Singapore Strategic Dialogue and being ambassador to Pakistan at the same time. So, and of course, he's been the Secretary General of ASEAN and been a former ambassador to India as well, but it just speaks to his diplomatic talents. To my diplomatic colleagues, ambassadors, high commissioners, it is rare to see so many of us here together in this room, except when the Dean summons us to bid farewell to someone. So it's again a tribute to Namita's that we have all of us here today, and to all the participants, and to, of course, the sponsors today. No word of thanks will be sufficient to express our gratitude for the support you've provided for this very, very important forum. Namita asked me to be the keynote speaker. I suspect you're always harshest on someone who's from your own country. But delighted to be here today. Again, this is a time of anniversaries in Singapore. I've been to many 50th anniversaries, 70th anniversaries. Now we are in the 200th anniversary of one such milestone in Singapore's life. And today is no less an important one. We are celebrating 20 years of Sun Media. As we all know, Nomita is an absolutely integral part of our diplomatic community here. She has made great friends with just about everyone in the diplomatic community. There is no event where she won't find her. That is her commitment to the cause. She serves here so beautifully. And for many times, she's been mistaken to be the ambassador of India to Singapore. And I dare say that she would have been certainly a more effective and certainly a more pleasant one than I or any of my predecessors over here. But publishing is not an easy task, but to do that for diplomatic missions takes a rare quality of commitment, tenacity, perseverance, and self-belief. And it is a tribute to all those characters that she has, the attributes that Sun Media is so successful in bringing to Singapore community all that is happening around the world through the diplomatic missions over here. Now, it is again a mark of her ambition and her tenacity and her self-belief and optimism that the theme for today's discussion is World Opportunities Forum. Now, this is at a time when we seem to be living on an edge. There is persistent tension, violence, turmoil, migrations, dislocations, trade wars, protectionism, great power, rivalry, and competition returning, all of that we have perhaps not seen together since the end of the Second War. But this is also a time that we see unprecedented opportunities, freedoms, prosperity, education, health, and connectivity in the world. But it is perhaps a sign of the transition that we are going through from the international order that we are familiar with to one that is yet to take shape. And in the familiar word of today's times, it is a time of disruption also in the world order. And therefore, I will speak today about opportunities in the age of disruption. Now, disruption is one of the catchiest phrases today. If you want people to attend a seminar or conference, you just have to inject the word disruption into one of the topics. It is amazing how a word that used to essentially describe young students disrupting a class to one that has become the defining word for our times. Every generation in the world thinks that it is going through a time of profound changes. But I think ours is the one that is actually experiencing it, because at no time in centuries have so many changes, so many transitions come together at the same time. The most visible, of course, of this transition is the dawn of the digital or technological era. It is changing everything around us, the way we live, communicate, work, commute, entertain ourselves. It is redefining politics, economy, society, and it is raising an entirely new set of questions about ethics, law, regulation, governance, privacy, security, and data ownership. It is also a time when we know that the world is entering a phase when today's jobs won't exist tomorrow, and tomorrow's jobs are yet to be born. But it is a time of extraordinary opportunities of the kind that we haven't seen for ages. We have now the rare and unprecedented opportunity to transform lives, to mainstream the marginalized, to empower the weak, to unleash enterprise, to equip the youth, to transform governance, to make it more citizen-centric, to improve public delivery of services, to bring banking, insurance, pensions, and opportunities within the reach of all, to improve education and to improve medical services. These are opportunities that are transforming lives across the world. And no better way to see it than in examples that we see around the world. In India, in the course of 4 years, we have opened 350 million bank accounts, bringing banking within the reach of all. Today, we have 1.2 billion biometrics, over 1 billion phones, and 1 billion bank accounts. This trinity is transforming lives across the country in a way that was unimaginable years ago. We have been able to launch a universal health scheme that will touch 500 million lives. We have issued 145 million microloans amounting to $90 billion in the course of 4 years to the most vulnerable and the poorest sections of society. But it isn't just in India. I look at Africa, where we are all familiar with the story of M-Pesa. But then there is also in Egypt, Mabsar, which is providing a new way for the blind to navigate their way across streets on their own. There is Flutterwave in Nigeria. There is Sun Exchange in South Africa. These are the big transformative innovations that are being enabled by technology that are changing lives in ways that was unimaginable years ago. In Latin America, today, it is financial inclusion of fintech companies that is attracting the highest level of venture capital investments in a continent where half the people are still unbanked. In Brazil, there is mGov, which is bringing opportunities to the most vulnerable sections of society through financial inclusion, advisories, and social services. Here in Southeast Asia, there was a 44% increase in internet economy last year alone. And in Indonesia, which perhaps has the best broadband access in emerging markets today, OVO, an e-wallet, saw a 75 times increase in transactions in the course of just 1 year. These are the kinds of transformations that we are seeing today that technology has enabled at a time when we think of technology as the great disruptor. But there is a far more profound change that is also taking place, as we have just seen, in the context of a technology war emerging between the two largest economies of the world. However that plays itself out, whatever be the response of one or the other to what is now decidedly going to be a technological competition between two strategic rivals, it is going to change the global supply chain in the electronics and information technology industry. And when it does so, it opens an entirely new set of opportunities for countries to ride on this new supply chains that are bound to emerge. But a deeper change that technology always creates, which we have just seen, is in terms of the strategic competition. Let's go back to the time of the first industrial and the second industrial revolution and the first wave of globalization, which took place between 1870 and 1908. That was a period when technology had enabled production on mass scale to take place and movement of goods to take place cheaply across the world, and that led to concentration of production in a few countries and trade in commodities and finished goods across the world. And that is the period of the great divergence, when economies in the West became more prosperous and the rest of the world became, in a sense, fell behind economically. But it is the second wave of globalization which is changing all that. It is the age of great convergence, and that is because, driven by the electronic revolution, it is not only easy now to move goods around the world, and it is also easy to move ideas and people and finance around the world. And that has led to a migration of production from the West to the rest of the world, and particularly to those countries that have been able to invest rightly in human resources and infrastructure to take advantage of this. And therefore, this second wave of globalization that took place between 1970 and to the point of inflection in 2008 is a period of great convergence. And that is a period which has led, in some sense, to the relative decline of the West and the rise of the East, to starting with Japan, and then through the Asian tigers, to China, and now to India. It is for the first time in 3 centuries that soon the world's largest economy in purchasing power parity will not be an English-speaking, liberal democracy, Western, or market-driven economy. And that means something for the global order. It changes the paradigm in which we see the whole theory of political economy as well. But it is not a world in which the largest economy will also be the richest or the most powerful. For Europe and the United States will continue to be the key drivers of technology and innovation in the world. And in terms of per capita income, in terms of access to wealth, they will continue to lead the world. So we are not entering a future that will be either unipolar or a G2 or bipolar. It will not be a world that will be a compact of nations acting unison, but it will be a world in which there will be multiple centers of power and opportunity that will continue to offer us great opportunities for growth. Look at the 10 largest economies or the 20 economies that will be there in the year 2030. It'll include not just China, India, United States, Japan. It'll also include Egypt, Turkey, Brazil, Russia, Indonesia. That is the manner in which growth is going to spread and become more diffuse around the world, and that opens up entirely new sets of opportunities. But because the world is changing and the new order is coming upon us, we also see that the existing institutional structures of the world, which is the United Nations system, the Bretton Woods institutions, and the trade institutions like WTO are under stress. In the area of trade, for example, we are caught between integration and fragmentation. There is this opposing poles of integration and fragmentation. And the WTO seems to become less and less relevant. The dispute settlement mechanism is yet to be fully manned in recent years. But this is a time for all of us, those in the West who built that institutions and no longer find it attractive, and those who are on the rise and would like to rewrite the rules of the international order, to work together to make these institutions relevant and effective for our time and more democratic and more representative of the contemporary world. This is the great opportunity that all nations face today, and that all of us need to work together to fashion. The other disruption that is taking place in the world is in the realm of climate change and clean energy. Just as we are passing out of the industrial age into the information age, we are soon going to be leaving behind the world of fossil fuels and entering the world of clean energy. In India, in the course of the last 4 years, we've added 35 gigawatts of renewable energy. Today, the bidding price for solar and wind power is lower than that for thermal power, and that is the market-driven change that is taking place. The amount of money a firm investing in renewable energy can raise from the market far exceeds the amount of money that a thermal power plant project can raise today. In the course of last year, two-thirds of the global power generating capacity that was added was in the form of renewable energy. Two-thirds. 71% of that took place in the developing world. 61% of it took place in Asia. China, Brazil, India are among the leaders. But there are countries in Africa, each of which are developing innovative models to provide solar power to the remotest villages. According to the International Energy Agency, today we have 3.1 million electric vehicles in the world. By 2030, that number is scheduled to climb to 125 million, and if we get our policies right, it will be 220 million by then. That is small comfort when you think that the total stock of vehicles in 2030 will be 2 billion. So there'd still be 10%, but that is the kind of disruption that is taking place. So this is a world in which disruption is creating enormous opportunities, not just for example, to provide ourselves with clean energy, but to make the right investments in developing industries that cater to the clean energy market. So what we are looking at around the world, in each region, you see very inspiring changes. Here in the ASEAN region, you see countries like Myanmar, Philippines, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos recording very high rates of growth to supplement the weight that countries like Indonesia and Thailand and Singapore provide. These are among the fastest growing economies. ASEAN has 640 million people, growing at 5% a year, provides an enormous opportunity, especially as it is coming together as an economic unit. In South Asia, it is Bangladesh which is growing at 7.5% to 8% and making a transformative changes in the social sector, becoming the second largest exporter also of ready-made garments. In the Middle East, in the Gulf region, Saudi Arabia, hitherto reliant on oil, is undertaking modernization and economic transformation on a scale that has rarely been seen. In UAE, if you go to the Masdar city, you will see a city that is a zero carbon city already. In Africa, 20 sub-Saharan countries are each going to record growth rates of more than 5% over the next decade, and that means something. In addition to the big ones like South Africa, Egypt, and Nigeria, today you see Ethiopia growing at 8%, you see Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, Tanzania, Rwanda, planning to be a smart nation, Ghana, all growing at very high rates of growth in a stable political environment and sound macroeconomic management. Central Asia, once in the shadows of the great power rivalry, is re-emerging as the hub of Eurasia and working together with Russia, creating a Eurasian Economic Union that is going to be the bridge between Europe and Asia. And recalling the glorious days when Central Asia was the leader in the world in science and in medicine and in trade and in architecture. In Latin America, not only it's Brazil and Argentina, but you now see Peru, you see Mexico, Panama, they're all growing at, Chile growing at very high rates of growth, undertaking transformative changes in their economy. But it is also Europe and the United States that will continue to be great drivers. So you're looking at a world where economic opportunities are becoming far more widespread and arising from different places. We're entering a world where infrastructure and connectivity has become the buzzword, and there are so many global initiatives that are taking place which are connecting nations with themselves and with the rest of the others. You have today a much higher level of connectivity than you could ever imagine. Levels of education, skills, and research across the world that is enabling countries to develop human resources to power their own growth for the future. It is also the domestic policy space and the international cooperation that will hold the key to realizing the opportunities that the world before us presents. We must all invest more in sound macroeconomic management, in education, in skills, in human resources, in infrastructure, in keeping our economies open and vibrant and flexible and agile, and in working together across nations, across our divisions, from those who are rising and those who have seen the greatest days, to work together to carve out the institutions and agreements and frameworks for our future. And there's no place better to discuss this than here in Singapore, which, as we've just heard, is the hub of Asia, where the center of gravity of opportunities and challenges are shifting. But it is also a nation of 5.4 million residents spread over 719 square kilometers that has shown what it takes to be successful in the world of challenges by investing in human resources and infrastructure, by following right policies, and by building a harmonious multicultural society which offers opportunity for all and confidence to each and every individual. It has been it's a society that has opened its arms to the world and held it together in a tight embrace of its diversity. And it has been a consistent voice of openness, connection, connectivity, and integration. And it is obvious its profile in the world is rising, because in the course of the time that I have been here, I've seen the number of embassies increase here significantly. So I hope that this kind of an event that Sun Media has started, maybe just to celebrate its 20th anniversary, will also become an event that continues to draw people from around the world to share their experiences, to talk about the opportunities that each of their countries provide. So an anniversary event could well turn out to be one that offers Singapore yet another platform. And judging by the response we have seen from ambassadors and high commissions today, it surely is an event of great promise going into the future. And before I conclude, let me just say a few words about India, which I haven't spoken. Tomorrow we will have the results of what has been the largest election in human history, involving 900 million voters, of which 67% cast their votes, so that straight away is above 600 million, who exercised their franchise over 1 million polling booths. And what the exit polls show is that there will be continuity in the government, but regardless of what the outcome of the democratic process is, two things stand out: that over the course of the past 30 years, India has continued to be on the path of opening and reforms and has continuously sustained growth rates averaging 7% and more. For a nation of 1.3 billion people, growing at the rate of 7 to 8% a year, it's a $2.6 trillion economy that is soon going to be a $5 trillion economy by 2025, with a trade of $2 trillion, is surely an opportunity for the world. And today, when we look at all the underlying determinants of growth and transformation, the demography, the population, the policy, the politics, the governance, the reforms, the scale of investment, the scale of ambitions, the digital revolution that is taking place in India, the urban revolution that we are undergoing, the investment that is taking place in skills and education, the unprecedented scale of expansion of infrastructure. That is one of the biggest infrastructure stories in the world, where we are adding 30 kilometers of four-lane expressways every day. We've added 30 new additional airports in the course of 4 years. We have added 100,000 megawatts of power in the course of 4 years. These are all underlying determinants of growth that are coming together and being aligned in a way that will sustain high rates of growth for years to come, all in the context of a society that is richly diverse, wedded to democracy and rule of law, and committed to playing by the rule of law internationally as well. So we look forward to working with not just Singapore, but with the rest of the world in sharing our opportunities, sharing our prosperity, and working together to make a world a better, more peaceful, more stable and prosperous place, and a sustainable place in the future. So thank you very much, and once again, wishing Sun Media a great future here in Singapore, and hopefully turning World Opportunity Forum into a permanent forum here. Thank you very much.